This episode of CNR JUTA De BEER is sponsored by MIWAY Blink, the faster, simpler, and more rewarding car insurance. Get a quote in minutes. Get car cover sorted in a blink.
Look, man, while you're here, you just gotta get all those ideas out. Try. You might not succeed at all of them, but like, man, die empty. And like, I don't want to regret not trying.
From CNR JUTA De BEER, imi nomsindisi wesizwe, umvelisi emnqango umelisi wesizwe, formerly known as Lwazi Madonsela, bringing you a show about creative entrepreneurs live from the landmark that not only birth SA street culture but also formalize the street hustle. On today's episode, we have CNR JUTA De BEER, umsindisi wesizwe, special edition, umvelisi emnqango. Thank God for the savings. Oh yeah, him. I got Joe Human in studio, better referred to as JH, the man, the business, the entrepreneur, the pioneer, one of the leaders in the tastemaker space, literally also hosting tastings, which is quite crazy. Mr. Jameson, how are you?
Welcome, bro. And I don't even know why I'm saying welcome, because like I'm in your space, but like just letting you into my energy and like, you know, welcome, bro. Like,
you're at home, it smells nice.
It's good to be here, man. It's I think I'm excited to just talk, man, and just share. This is my first podcast in like what 3-4 years.
Ray J, I did it first. But on a serious note, you're an entrepreneur, one of the pioneers, one of the early tastemakers. Where did we get to that point where you're in varsity? Like, yo, I'm studying towards this degree. Actually, I'm gonna quit and go start my agency with my friend.
I think, bro, it's purpose, but also like that purpose was pushed through circumstance, right? Like my parents eventually just called me while I was at MGI, and they were like, "Listen, you got 3 other siblings, and we actually can't afford this. We thought we could, but we can't, bro, so you gotta drop out." And you know, like at that point it was quite shattering for me, because I think for the longest time we're all conditioned to think that you have to go through school to be someone or be something. And I'm not saying like don't go to school, guys. Please do if you can afford it. It's great. It will give you certain skills and put you in spaces that are beneficial to you, right? But I think for me, it was more of like, okay, if I don't get this degree, who am I going to become, right? So at that point, I didn't have people that were speaking about entrepreneurship. I didn't have people that were speaking about chasing your own dream and all the stuff. So I was pushed into a space where I just had to figure stuff out. And I just chose to do what I love. At the time, I didn't know it was going to get me here, but it was more of like, you're creative. This is what you enjoy. You enjoy putting out work, designing, drawing, you know, social media or content. So just finding my way through that has pretty much been how I ended up, you know, being where I am. So I wouldn't say it was like a conscious decision. It was more circumstantial, and just like you're now out in the world and you're on your own. You know, you got family, yes, but like you need to figure out who you want to become and what you want to do.
In that moment when you do your first deal, your first major, where you realize, yo, I can actually pay rent on my own, what's that feeling like?
It was a really good feeling, and I'll tell you why. Because so Vanna, I come from a black family, you know, like you gotta be a doctor, you gotta be an engineer, right? And that's what they wish for you. So even after I dropped out and I got a job where I was doing design and stuff, my dad was not really like the guy who was vibing with what I was doing, because even since grade 10 when I chose visual arts, already that's where I feel like the beef started, right? So you want to be an artist, right? You want to like sit in the mall, draw people's faces.
Sit in the mall.
Is that your life, right? Because back then, like that's what artists
only exposure.
Exactly, right? So they were not thinking about animation or digital or anything like that. So being able to come back home with money that you made from design or doing your own thing and saying, Mom, here's a little something, like that got me respect from my dad. Right? So that feeling was great. Inconsistent though, because like you're a freelancer, bro. You don't know when your next paycheck is coming through, right?
Just pay as much rent as you can.
Exactly, bro. So that feeling was fulfilling, but at the same time, like it makes you realize that you have to put in effort. You have to tell the universe where you want to go and what you actually want to achieve, and put in the work so that those opportunities actually find you and you start building something.
The Jameson opportunity finds you. I guess for me, understanding your background in brand elevation, I wouldn't say influencing, because you bring in new narrative and new twist, even the way you distribute the work and how you've approached it, as opposed to other influencers who've come to say, yo, this is a bottle of water, hashtag thank you for this. You did your first reel before reels were real with your partnership with Tanqueray. How is that business acumen and business conversation transcended through the years to now you being at Jameson?
So one of the things I'm really grateful for is meeting people in the industry that actually cared about my growth. They could see that I had potential, but they didn't want to exploit me, right? They actually wanted to help me build. So I had, his name is Stax. He was, I didn't know he was going to become my manager when I met him, right? Because he was actually one of my clients. And we were doing like design work for a client of his who needed like branding and stuff, and we just built a very strong relationship. And he's such a great strategist, so he became my manager, and he actually kind of started showing me the ropes of how to negotiate such type of deals, because with the tank deal, it was very direct. It was, look, this is the number, these are the terms, right? And he came to me and we said, and it's like, this is what's going on, how much you want to earn. Okay, cool, this is how we'll negotiate it. This is the value that you're actually bringing in. And I think it's important for other people to also show you where in the value chain you sit, right? Because as creatives, we are constantly trying to pay rent, trying to get our work out there, trying to just make people see what we're doing, but we forget the role that we play in the value chain and in the creative economy, right? So the moment you don't know where you sit and how much value you're adding, you fall prey to either undercharging, or not being able to negotiate or state what you actually really want. So learning those skills and those business acumens, not just for deal negotiating, but even for me as a young black creative, was really beneficial.
That's a beautiful moment. And then you pivoting now. Now you're a different guy now. You're designing for Temple Jeans, and your branding work just goes. You're also involved in Threaded Man, switching it to that. At that moment, do you realize the impact and the history you're making?
I don't, bro. And it's a crazy conversation I was having with a friend of mine, because they saw something online and it was a piece of content that I had put out. And then they sent it to me and they're like, dude, do you realize how like impactful and big you are, or like how much of a voice you have like in the creative industry? And I'm like, I don't, bro, because I'm constantly figuring shit out. Like every day I wake up and I'm like, what is Joe doing today, right? How do I grow? How do I add value? And you get people that like follow you, and you're growing your audience and whatnot, but you don't realize that impact, because they're almost sitting in a room and saying, oh my God, Joe, you're awesome. Like you'd meet one person every like 6 months and be like, hey, I know you from Twitter, or I've seen your work, right? And those moments are great, but they're not, I don't think they're impactful enough to be overwhelmingly like confirming, right? So when you say, do you realize how much impact and work you've done? I don't, because I think also I don't dwell on my past achievements, right? I'm always focused on what's next, because I'm only as good as my last job, right? And not to say that I don't celebrate those little wins and those moments. I do, but I'm always thinking of improving and how do I grow? How do I add more value? You know, what do I build next? Because there really is no future. There's only a present, right? So it's all about what are you doing now? Because even when you be in the future, you will be present, right? In that moment. So it's really that, just like focusing on what's next.
Speaking of what's next, right? You designed my company CI, which is the corporate identity for the people who don't know, because I only learned that last year. Someone's like, yo, your company CI is so brilliant. I'm like, what's a company CI?
Yeah,
because I didn't study graphic design, you know, we just figured it out on the way. Like, oh, that looks great. So you're designing a company CI. What's your word of advice to the next kid who has these brilliant CI ideas where he's doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of charging? Because when you create a company CI for a company that's scaling, do you also feel like you should have rather went for equity? Are those conversations even on the table?
It's very tricky, bro. But there's always a workaround. I think the first thing is jump onto projects that you're passionate about and companies or brands that you believe in, right? I think that is so important. Like, don't jump onto something, and it's difficult because if you're hungry and someone's offering you money, right? Whether you might align to that brand or that project or not, because you're hungry, right? Brand alignment kind of falls away, right? So it becomes very difficult to say no. So playing the long game is very difficult. But I think, like, do your best to work on things that you're actually passionate about, that you believe in. Because the moment you do that, the type of work you also create, right, is just beyond amazing, right? Because now you're thinking just beyond design rules and what a CI should look like, what elements. You're being creative, you're being yourself, and it's coming from a very authentic and organic space. I think that's one. In terms of charging, look, it'll depend on where you want to go and how you want to build what you're doing. I'm not a big fan of taking equity. I will try and build value and see what type of business it is, where they're going, and how can I get that value back, whether it's in 6 months, a year, 3 months, right? And I'm not saying work for free. I'm saying be very smart in how you structure the things that you do and where you give value and what you're getting out of it. It really comes down to where you're building your brand. Especially if you're starting out, you are going to have to do things for free. And this is free in inverted commas, right? Because it doesn't always have to be monetary value that you're getting back. It could be a network, it could be a space, it could be another client that person's offering you confirmed, right? It could be anything. It could be equipment. It could be, so just like focus on what you're actually trying to do, but work on the things that you believe in and that you're passionate about. Find how much value you're adding. And even though we might not be exchanging money, right? Still send that client the invoice and say, look, I'm going to do this thing for you, but this is how much it would have actually cost you. And I'm going to send you the invoice just so you sit with it. Because what that does is it reminds that person that even though this thing looks like it's for free, there's value and a price attached to it. So the next time that person comes back, right, it's an easier conversation to have if you actually want to get paid. But yeah, it really comes down to like your strategy, what you want to grow, how you want to grow it. Those negotiations will vary based on that.
Speaking of scaling, you're one of the first people as a pioneer. This is for your day ones. You're one of those first people who started threads that actually empowered people. It wasn't a thread exposing, talking. It was like, yo, you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you scaled that up into a podcast where you brought in a lot of pioneers as well in the field similar to yours, just to learn more and expose more people to it. And then you graduated that to Friends of Subtle Meetup, to Subtle Meetup, where people could come together and share ideas, share context, share business, right? What led you to that stage?
Bro, I think it's
And did you know that, these are actually steps building up?
I didn't until this moment, actually, because I'm looking back at it and I'm like, hey, actually, yes, that's correct. But in the moment, I didn't understand what I was actually doing, right? And I think it's understanding. It's called a value ladder, right? And as creatives, a lot of us are selling time, okay? Because you constantly have to be in the room. You have to be working on that project to make money. And what happens is, as you start scaling and the demand becomes higher for what you're doing or your time, now you can't be like in 5 places all at once, right? So what you have to do is you have to productize your time, right? How do I turn what I'm doing right now into a product that can live either as a podcast, as an event, as a product, right? And still monetize from that whilst I'm sleeping, right? So Threads was literally that. Like, I had to constantly be on Twitter, writing the threads, commenting, re-engaging with people, right? Sharing links and all that stuff. And it got to a time where I became so busy that I couldn't do threads. I couldn't run a Twitter space. So what you do next is you productize that thread into an actual live space where people can come in, meet like-minded people, share that value, collaborate within that space, right? And then go out into the world and grow themselves, right? So the focus was, how do I turn the piece of content that I'm doing online into a community, right? Because once you've got a community, there's 2 things. Number one, you can sell the community to the brand to monetize, because that's an audience that you've garnered, right? And you've built value from. Or 2, you can sell content or products to your community and monetize directly from them, right? So that was pretty much sort of like where my headspace became after I realized that this was actually what I'm doing and what I'm building. Yeah.
And then how are we scaling it to the next level?
Scaling to the next level is product, bro. I think for the longest time, I've always wanted to put something into people's hands that they can feel, they can touch, they can smell. And everyone knows that there's so many people out there that wear hats, but for some odd reason, I've kind of created this identity around wearing a hat that's very recognizable, if that's the word, right? And I want to scale that. I want to just focus on making beautiful hats, products, accessories. And I think for me, it also comes from a space of understanding that as human beings, we are multifaceted, man. Like, you can't expect Joe to be doing threads for 10 years, right? There has to be growth. There has to be something else that he jumps onto. And that's scary, because for the longest time you've been doing threads and everyone knows it as like the thread guy, the brand guy. But now you're like doing hats. Okay, cool. Now you're doing whiskey. All right, cool. I'm playing my first DJ set on Saturday, right? Heard it here first. Like, no one knows that. But I'm just expressing myself creatively in many different forms, because look, man, while you're here, you just gotta get all those ideas out. Try. You might not succeed at all of them, but like, man, die empty. And like, I don't want to regret not trying.
Might name this Die Empty. It's a beautiful title. At least. Oh man. You've told us about your journey and your business acumen. I think the most important question to ask: what's your word to the youth?
My word to the youth, oof, man. There's only one of you. Literally. Like, there's only one Lwazi. There's only one Joe human. There could be other guys trying to do what you're doing. There could be other guys doing what I'm doing. But our method will always be different, and that's your blueprint. Like, we are so unique. We might see the world in the same eyes, but how we process it is very different, right? And that's your power. Like, trust in that, believe in that. Do not be afraid to take the less road traveled. I think that's what's gotten me here. Like, constantly believing in myself, because the moment you're able to convince someone that your idea bangs and this is the shit that you really want to do, once you've got that confidence, you can sell anything, right? Because people don't know what they want until you show it to them. That's me.
Okay, I have another one. How do you keep going?
How do I keep going?
Johnny Walker, come to the show.
How do I keep going? People, man. People. Like, you, MASH, community, content, articles, freaking YouTube. Like,
do you never get jaded? It's like you did the reels, you did the alcohol, you did the swag, you did the thread.
Everything around me, man. Everything around me keeps me going.
It's like, yo, my dog, not get sharp, no.
No, do you know why, bro? Because I think there's always something that needs to be done that's not being done, and because you exist and because you're unique, only you can figure out what that next thing is. You understand? Because you see the world in a certain way that other people don't. So if Joe doesn't do it, no one else is going to do it, right? If Lwazi doesn't do it, no one else is going to do it. But if Lwazi does it, then the rest of us can see how Lwazi is doing it, then we're inspired by that, right? And he opens up a whole new opportunity, a whole new space, a whole new direction for us to see the world differently, for us to see podcasts differently, for us to see content differently, right? So that's the other thing, like, dog, if you're not going to do it, no one else will.
Damn. You're a businessman, right? And you're always doing these chores. Sometimes you're driving, sometimes you're flying. What's the role of insurance as an independent business?
Look, bro, I think you got to take care of yourself. As young black professionals, we're obviously going through a lot of things, bro, like inflation, running the business, bills, all of that, black tax. I think you just got to find what works for you. I can't say, oh, no, get life insurance or get a policy or whatever. It really comes down to what works for you and what you can afford. But I think just take care of yourself, man. Like, be disciplined. Especially if you're working in an industry like mine where I work with alcohol, right? But I always have to be driving, I always have to be traveling, I always have to be like in spaces, and we know how crazy that can get because alcohol is a substance that alters the body, alters the mind. It comes down to being disciplined and knowing exactly what your purpose is, what you actually need to do to get to where you need to get to.
That's fire, man. I keep thinking about it, right? Because recently now I'm like getting older, so I'm realizing there's a need for car insurance, there's a need of having more things.
Bro.
And right now it's like, okay, cool. But I'm looking for car insurance that simplifies my life. And then I started finding a car insurance that they have an app where it tracks, because I was trying to get insurance from another company and they didn't have the app that tracked my car, didn't track my movement, and then I found MIWAY Blink. That was the one that's been helping me. And what I'm trying to figure is, what more do we need as creatives to simplify our driving, our experiences? From your perspective as someone who's always on the road.
Man, I hope he hears this, but guys, just fix the potholes. Like, let's start there. Let's start there. Let's start with that. But I think it's just community, bro. As a creative community, a lot of us work in silos. And I think we need to start creating a lot more spaces where we can come together and like look after one another, right? Whether it's coming up with an app of some sort that, I don't know, man, if I'm driving to like a certain place, I can alert to the people that might be using that route to say, hey, actually, this is what's happening, or this is what's on the road, or, I don't know. But I think just looking after each other as creatives, as a community, that will be something that can be valuable towards just ensuring that we're all safe and just doing what we need to be doing.
This episode of Juta De Beer is sponsored by MIWAY Blink, the faster, simpler, and more rewarding car insurance. Get cover in a blink. You can get up to 50% monthly cash back when you drive less than 2.5 kilometers per month. You can also manage your cover wherever and wherever with MIWAY Blink. Get a code in minutes.